Thank you for joining me for this look at the Aquarius Full Moon, which is happening in the decan that has been called by Coppock the Mark of Exile. So when this full moon reaches 6 degrees of Aquarius on July 29th, it lights up a part of the sky that we might sometimes be tempted to try and explain away. It can be asking us to leave our comfort zone. The moon is sitting tight with Pluto in Aquarius, while across the sky from it, the sun is meeting Jupiter in Leo in a really tight cazimi, which means that Jupiter is in the throne room. It's got this honoured audience with the sun who represents the king. It's a time of death and rebirth for Jupiter. So maybe it might feel like when you've been in a room with people that you've known for years, and then you start to feel this strange distance opening up between you, like you're playing a role now that used to be you, but it doesn't fit you anymore. Like something ahead is calling you forwards. And the old way, how you used to belong, it's not letting you look away any longer. This is the full moon of the exile. We're going back to a story that started with the moon family, the new moon in January 2025. So it's checking in on what it's outgrown since then in its container, in this area in our charts of Aquarius 1. And it's finding a calmer way to stand at this threshold. We've got eclipses coming after this. So Saturn and these eclipses that are coming in Leo and Pisces will still have work to do for us. And they're likely to show us which roads can carry us forward from here. So as I've said, this full moon is falling in the first decan of Aquarius, and a decan is a division of a sign. So Aquarius and all the signs split into 3 divisions, which are 10 degrees each. So there's the first, a middle one, the second, and then the third. And this is the first decan, and it's been called the Mark of Exile by Coppock in his book 36 Faces. And Aquarius 1 carries this combined influence of Venus and Saturn, who are its co-rulers. So there's this real push and pull between connection that Venus seeks and separation that Saturn's looking for, between wanting to belong and knowing that some structures have really reached their limit. Now, exile doesn't always mean that somebody's going to leave your life or that you're going to pack up and move. Sometimes you can be sitting in the same room or working the same job, scrolling through the same old feed that you always do, and you suddenly realize that you're just no longer the person who once felt at home there. That was once your comfort zone. But there's this subtle shift, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. It changes things for you. This exile isn't a sign that you've failed to fit in. It just means really that your values are growing. You've grown. Your own needs are coming into focus, and you've reached a point where being accepted here is asking too much of you. Maybe a friendship group only worked while you stayed quiet about what you wanted and needed while you were looking after everybody else. Or maybe a professional circle rewarded an older version of you that doesn't fit anymore. An identity that you built online now feels like a part that you're performing, that you're posting, but your heart isn't in it anymore. And this is the Leo Aquarius axis at work. It's like that performance part of Leo, but it has to feel authentic. Now it's becoming uncomfortable. It's being very honest in a way that's just ready to clear the air here. So here's the Wild Way card for this decan, and it gives us title Broaden Your Horizons. And the story is this image of the waxwings. And they're birds that migrate long distance, hunting for the sweetest berries. They don't stick around just because a branch once fed them well. They're going to follow what nourishes them now, crossing unfamiliar ground until they find another source, another season, another new place to land. The keywords that we're given are breaking free, exploring the frontiers, and discovery. But this isn't about running away whenever life feels hard. The waxwings move because the old food doesn't sustain them forever. And there's wisdom there in knowing when it's time to look farther out, to trust that something sustaining is waiting for you, even if you can't see it yet. And when we look at the chart, we can see that the moon here is so close to Pluto. We have buried loyalties, and they're surfacing now. Pluto is about things that are under the earth and were previously unseen. And when a planet comes close to it, that unearths what was previously unseen, and now we have to deal with it. We have to sort things out, and it's showing the power placements inside these groups in Aquarius. Who gets hurt? Who carries the emotional labor? Who is allowed to take up space when they speak? And who has learned to shrink back in exchange for just belonging in the group? So where is your place in those groups, and how do you belong, and do you continue to belong? And we have this Leo Aquarius axis with the moon in Aquarius and the sun opposite in Leo. And if you see how closely the sun is with Jupiter, they're both at 6 degrees, and there's just 5 arc minutes between them. So that makes it a very close cazimi. And that bakes that idea of this death and rebirth of Jupiter in Leo right into this feeling of this full moon. So this Leo Aquarius axis is asking you, where have you dimmed yourself to stay included? Where has a community supported your growth, but only as long as you dimmed certain parts of yourself? And this can show up as maybe leaving a friend group, or changing your professional circles, maybe stepping back from an online identity that no longer works for you, or just simply admitting that the role that you've been playing in any part of your life, within your family, within your home, within any friend groups, doesn't fit you anymore. And it's really showing this up to us right now. And it can be hard. The distance can sting, but it also creates room for you to meet people who will recognize you without asking you to make yourself smaller first, who will meet you as you are in your Leo authenticity, with that courage and that generosity and that bright light that Leo offers of the sun. And this recognition didn't just start under this full moon. This has been planting seeds all along. So the pattern of this full moon, we've got the moon aligning at 6 degrees. It's just past Pluto, but it's carrying that energy into this story of the full moon. And full moons bring things into view, while Pluto is taking us beneath the surface of what we thought we knew, maybe things that we were aware of before, but we've been able to put back into our unconscious, or maybe think that we'll deal with later, but they still stay buried there. And now this full moon is shining this bright light on it. Maybe they're feelings that have stayed contained and they're now becoming harder to dismiss. Maybe those unspoken terms within a friendship, that no longer works for you. Maybe the terms within your workplace, your family, or your wider community, even your neighborhood or your family. You know, that role that you play that you're now feeling, okay, it's time for me to speak up and change something about it. Just notice where that power has quietly gathered and where you've maybe consented to play a role. It's not about assigning blame or fault to anybody, because usually when we play these roles, we have consented to them on some level and it served us in some way for a time, but now it doesn't anymore. So maybe like a shared project depends on you being unpaid and contributing, staying silent, or being willing to keep the peace. And you have been up to now. But now Pluto is asking you to see where maybe fear, control, resentment, or old loyalties have shaped who you are now, how you belong, or who you're becoming. And also what has to change now for you to move forwards. It's about seeing where we're no longer consenting, where we ourselves need to take accountability and start the change happening. Across from that moon, we see the sun and Jupiter so close in that cazimi that's often called the heart of the sun, as though Jupiter has entered this throne room with the sun and they're in this tight conversation. Jupiter's got the ear of the king, maybe sitting at the side of the throne, having a deep conversation about what Jupiter's next cycle is going to mean. It's like that conversation at the start of a new government, setting out the objectives for the new term. In Leo, this can bring this stronger sense of what you want to create, how you're leading. Jupiter is the wise mage. He stands for what we believe in, the wisdom that we bring, the faith in those bigger structures in our lives, and what we want to share and stand behind. Maybe there's been an idea at the edge of your life and it felt too bold. Leo isn't afraid of being bold, and now it can surface as Jupiter will move forward after the full moon. Maybe you can allow that idea to emerge. Maybe there's a part of you that wants to speak more plainly, make something visible, or take responsibility for a new direction that you know is yours, as Pluto is unearthing those power structures where you kept yourself small. Maybe you can now take responsibility for leaning into that Leo boldness and allowing your light to shine. Wherever you've been hiding your light or dimming it, it's now time to let it shine, especially with the Leo eclipses. You're going to be working on that the next 18 months as the nodes move into Leo. Sun and Jupiter together bring this faith, warmth, and this wider view, this big perspective. And that's what Aquarius is encouraging us to do as well. A full moon in Aquarius is also asking us to take this big vision, this blue sky thinking term that people use. But they can also tempt us to exaggerate and overstate what we know. That confidence can be expanded. So check that any confidence is coming from your own lived experience, not just from needing to be the loudest person in the room or overperforming something. So this opposition is asking for both sides of that story, that honest expression and a life that comes from your heart. And Aquarius is asking, what do our choices mean within those groups, systems, and friendships around us? And with Pluto traveling through Aquarius, you may need to ask whether a collective expectation has become too heavy for you, or whether your wish to be seen in Leo depends on approval from people that you've outgrown in the Aquarius side. And if that's the case, it's time to find a group where you fit more naturally. A few days before the new moon, Saturn, the ruler of this full moon, stationed retrograde in Aries. As Aquarius's traditional ruler, Saturn has a lot to say about how this lunation unfolds. So it's significant that Saturn's stationed retrograde. That was on the 26th of July. It forms a sextile to the moon and a trine with the sun being in a fire sign that matches the Leo fire. So it's offering us this practical route through the emotional chart of the Leo Aquarius axis. Saturn isn't demanding immediate answers, which it might do in Aries normally. Aries is ruled by Mars that wants to move fast, but while it's retrograde, it's asking us to slow down a little bit and see what can actually hold weight. Have a look at what it's done so far in Aries and see what's actually working. This might mean reviewing a commitment before you renew it, clarifying any terms of a new collaboration that you're moving into, or allowing a new plan that you're making to take shape in smaller steps so that you're checking each step as you go to see if it's sustainable. Aries wants this direct action in this Mars nature that it has, but Saturn retrograde is asking, do these actions come from courage or from urgency? And there's a real difference between those two. A boundary that's going to protect your time can be more useful than making a big dramatic exit, and having a steady conversation can change more than an emotional declaration that's made impulsively. We also see Venus in Virgo here, and she's making a square to Mars, the ruler of Saturn in Gemini. Venus wants care and discernment and attention to what works in daily life while she's traveling through Virgo, while Mars in Gemini can be pulling us in multiple directions at once, filling the mind with options, messages, and competing demands. Many of us can be feeling quite exhausted at this time. So you may feel drawn to explore everything, even as another part of you knows that something needs proper care. So don't confuse many possibilities with a clear path. They're two different things. Let yourself stay curious and exploring what the options are. But when you choose what deserves your energy, choose that with more discernment and care, and lean into the Venus side. The lunar nodes are about to move into Leo and Aquarius, and that will bring in a new eclipse cycle centered on visibility, leadership, friendship, belonging, creativity, and individual freedom. And this full moon is giving us this early view of the questions that will develop over that 18 months as the nodes move through that sign. And we did have an Aquarius eclipse in February as well that was that first introduction to these themes. So you might want to think back to that time and what came up for you if something did. And behind all of it is this wider pattern that you've probably heard if you're watching astrology discussions, is this wider pattern called Barbo's basket, and that's linking Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, and Jupiter. So if we see how Jupiter is opposing Pluto here, but look at Pluto at 4 and then Neptune at 4 and Uranus at 4, and see how this opposition now links into this sextile and another sextile, and then Uranus is trining back, and a trine is of the nature of Jupiter. These are harmonious aspects. These are conversations that these outer planets, or they're sometimes known as generational planets, because they create this collective shift. I know in my discussion groups that many people are feeling it in their bodies right now. People are wondering what's going on, or they're seeing changes in people's lives, just these longer shift patterns that people are feeling like something is coming, but they don't quite know what. The planets will have had a conjunction, but the conjunction is like the new moon. So things aren't visible then. We don't know what's being seeded. And this is the first contact that these planets will have had, apart from Pluto and and Uranus, because it's a trine. They'll have already had a sextile and an opening square. But with the sextile, it's the first contact. And for them to all link up in this way is exceptionally rare. Astrologers don't have a reference of this kind of configuration forming to go back to let us reference what might happen. Usually when there's connections between these planets, we can look back to the past when it happened, even if it's going back to the 1700s or the 1600s, and see what happened in history at that point. But we don't have that. So people are only speculating what it might mean. And André Barbeau, who it's named after, he wrote that it was creating a whole new age for humanity, like a positive, spiritually focused age, which is very beautiful. And we can hope that that is what is coming into focus, and that maybe this is what's growing still, because this is still in the early stages of these planets connecting. It's still the opening act of their conversation. So maybe that's what's being set up as we see the old power structures being exposed, and that's ready for them to crumble and be replaced with something that works better for everybody, that works better for the collective, especially with Pluto in Aquarius. And Pluto is early in Aquarius as well, so it's early for these shifts to start happening. And the other important thing to remember is this is like the first opening of this conversation, and they are going to connect and reconnect many times over the next couple of years. Their first connection was on the 19th, over that weekend of the World Cup final, and they're going to keep reconnecting between now and 2028 before they start to move apart and start to do their own individual thing. So watch what's happening collectively over that longer time frame, and watch what's happening for you as well in your own life. If these are hitting any points or angles in your own chart, if they're not, it's probably not an individual story for you. But if it is hitting parts of your chart, if you've got parts of your chart that are affected by this full moon or by the Leo solar eclipse where we see it triggered again, you'll probably be drawn into part of this story. So we might expect changes in how we communicate, organize, create, and how we connect. And that might be touching your life in small ways. I'm not going to try and predict because we don't know. And I think it's better to say we don't know, but let's just observe and see what happens, and know that we're living in interesting times. Know that astrologers in the future will be looking back at what happens and studying it, which is exciting. It gives me goosebumps. We're the first ones to be living through it, that people are going to be looking back on as a start of something. What it is, we don't know yet, but let's see if we can contribute to it being something positive. This is the moon family story for the Aquarius full moon. So going back in time, when I said that it was the 31st of January, that's because that was the new moon of this moon family. And if this hits your chart, if you've got placements in that first decan of Aquarius, or between 2 to 11 degrees of the fixed placements, and also the air signs, so that's Aquarius, Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Gemini and Libra, the air signs. And also if you've got Saturn as your Lord of the Year or your solar return ascendant, this is likely to be calling you in as a story. So this new moon was when things weren't really visible. It's dark at the time of a new moon. So again, think as above, so below. If the sky is dark, then it's like a seed being planted. It hasn't germinated yet. It's below the earth and we can't see what it's going to grow into. But at the first quarter, there's like a turning point. There's decisions to be made. The seed has grown and maybe you need to plant it out. Maybe you need to separate the seeds, but you can see what's growing. It's come above the earth. There's decisions, choices. Sometimes it's called a crisis of action. There's action that needs to be taken, and that's because of this square aspect between the sun and the moon. So this is a progressing relationship, a story that begins in January, but in October, there's something that needs to change. There's decisions that need to be made about the story where it might go in a slightly different direction. And now we're at this full moon point on the 29th of July at 6 degrees of Aquarius. And that's when things come to a culmination or a peak and they become illuminated. And again, there might be decisions to be made, and that's about what's being revealed to you, what you might need to let fall away of that. But it's like a flowering of the plant that's been grown. It's not quite time to harvest. The harvest comes at the last quarter. If you are harvesting, you're deciding what are you going to let go to seed, what are you cutting for your crop, and how are you going to store it. So there's all those kinds of decisions. And for us, that's about integration. What are we going to take forward into the next cycle? And what are we going to release? What has been useful, but it's not going to sustain us going forward. So So there's a process of integration and disintegration happening at the same time. Working with these moon families, it's important to notice that this first quarter can be a time when you can give up because you think, oh, well, if it's this challenging, it's not working. But if you know you're in a first quarter phase and this is what's supposed to be happening, you can just ride those challenges knowing that, okay, I'm just meant to be making decisions. That's all this is. And just make those decisions, take that action, know that you're in a time of taking action. And in the full moon time, you're more in a time of observing, noticing what's coming up. And that's where we are right now. And in that last quarter, you're in a time of integrating. You're in a time when it's good to be letting go of some of the things, some parts of the story. So if things are asking to be released, it's okay. You can let them go with gratitude. Don't hold on to everything, especially things that are asking to be released. So it helps us to know these phases and to understand what's being asked of us at each point. I hope that's helpful in placing you in terms of what kind of future were you beginning to imagine at that new moon in January 2025? Was it about friendships, study groups, technology plans, or an independent idea that was drawing your attention? Sometimes it's a small decision that can alter the people in the life around you. Accepting a new position, for example, in your work can change the people who are affected by your daily life and your daily routine. Or turning down an invitation can reveal who respects your limits. For example, if people are going to respect your boundaries. Or sharing your real opinion online. I mean, how brave is that? And how revealing is it when you get those responses from people that you thought you knew or you thought cared about you as well? So choosing not to carry a group's emotional burden can leave an empty space for you if you decide to step back. But setting boundaries, choosing to step away can also show you who's willing to meet you with equal responsibility, who is willing to respect those boundaries that you've set. And the full moon here can connect those dots between those earlier moments in that moon cycle and help you recognize that what felt like a loss was actually a clearing. Or maybe you see a decision that you made to protect yourself and realize that it's changed your identity more than you realized. The moon family keeps moving into this last quarter phase, so it's not all over after this full moon. So I would say become more aware of where you want to be seen, what kind of belonging supports that, and also face where you've handed over too much of your own authority to a group, an audience, a partner, a colleague, or an old idea of what success looks like for you. These themes are not going to all automatically resolve at this time, but you're being shown. Look out for how you can see that this is showing up for you right now. Maybe through choices, meetings, endings, or something that somebody says that really hits a nerve for you. And allow those new beginnings to emerge in their own time. Trust and proceed. Don't force certainty. If Saturn is closing a door for you right now with this retrograde, pay attention and ask yourself whether it was ever built to last, if it was just there for a time for you. If it steadies a path, take that seriously too. Saturn can crystallize things and make them steadier and stronger for us. A reroute can feel frustrating when it's a delay that you hadn't accounted for, but it can keep you from building your future on ground that was shifting and wouldn't have held you. So I'd like to offer you a ritual that might help at this time. It can help if you can find yourself a quiet spot, but it's not always necessary if that's not possible. If you journal, grab your journal or a notebook and pen. If you are able to, light a candle or just keep a little bowl of water beside you. You don't need anything fancy and just sit comfortably. Take a few slower breaths. And if you can, begin to picture a former community, a role or an identity that was yours, maybe a workplace or a friendship group, a project, an online space, or a version of yourself that you worked really hard to maintain. Allow it to appear without judging it as good or bad, or for you, not for you going forwards. Notice what feels true about it still. Maybe there are the people, skills, memories, or values that you still want to carry forward. And then also notice what feels draining, too tight, or just not honest and true for you anymore. And stay with that feeling for a moment. Maybe you can feel it in your body somewhere. You don't have to solve it or fix it right now, but just write these questions down and answer them without editing yourself or overthinking or trying to make it kind to anybody. Ask yourself, what did I outgrow? And what decision brought me here? What belonging is asking me to abandon myself? And what future community can I help to build? When you look at these answers, see if you can write one boundary that you could put into your life that's going to support you for the next lunar month. And maybe You want to review that as the full moon approaches and separates, as more information becomes available to you. Maybe check in every couple of days with your notes and see if you need to adapt them. And then consider if there's an act of stewardship, something practical that you can do for your future self. What would future you, looking back in 9 months at that last quarter moon, be grateful that you started now? Something maybe that you've been thinking of but haven't yet done. That might mean contacting somebody that you've meant to, or learning a skill, doing it, not thinking about it, or showing up differently in a space that matters to you. And when you're ready, close by just thanking that container, that space, for the wisdom that it's shared with you, for the insights that you've gained. So in conclusion, this mark of the exile isn't that you've lost your place or that you're on the wrong path. It's just a clarity that's coming to us about an old place that can no longer hold the person that you're becoming now. You might not know yet exactly where the next community is for you, what your next role is, or your next direction, but you're starting to recognize what is asking for your honesty. Allow this full moon to be information for you. And remember that the moon family tells you that this is a much longer story. These Leo Aquarius eclipses are only just beginning, and it is a long process that will help support you with the changes that are likely to be coming. It's going to be a process. This first recognition is only the beginning of the insights. The full moon is helping us see where we're no longer fitting, so we can start to recognize where we do. Just trust and proceed. Notice what holds when you stop carrying more than your share, and notice what falls apart when you become more fully yourself. That's really important information. If you know your chart, tell me in the comments which house holds 6 degrees of Aquarius for you. What part of your life is this showing up? Or share the community theme that's becoming clearer for you right now. And if you'd like to keep navigating this eclipse season with grounded astrology and mindful practices, subscribe to Celestial Astrologies. There'll be an Astro Mindfulness coming soon, which will also help you with this. And I run Celestia Circle, where we look ahead at the lunations coming up, and we look at the moon family stories. So that will help guide you through the lunation season, through the eclipse season. And also don't forget Asterosphere Kairos, the astrology collective that I'm in. We're going to be offering a Leo eclipse workshop for you, and the investment is only $22. So do catch that. That's going to be on the 2nd of August. So we'll go into the Leo eclipse and everything that it's telling us in more detail, and also bring in the moon family's my part, but also other things like rituals and herbs and the Saros cycle and all kind of other parts of it, but help you to really get to interpret your own chart. So you can catch that link in my Substack, and we'll be promoting it on all of our socials. That's Krista from Practical Astros and Shauna from Unfolding Astrology. If you go to Ko-fi, you'll find it under Asterosphere Kairos, and I'll put the link in the show notes as well. Okay, thank you for joining me.